Kilalanin natin ang updated and loaded complete full lineup ng Gilas Pilipinas para sa 2026 Asian Games. Point guards: Scottie Thompson, 6'1", 180 pounds, 32 years old, 14.7 points, 7.2 rebounds, 6.4 assists, 1.3 steals, 44% three-point shooter, 64% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Juan Gomez Deliano, 6 feet, 163 pounds, 26 years old, 19 points, 7.2 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 1.2 steals, 44% three-point shooter, 76% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. RJ Abarientos, 5'10", 187 pounds, 26 years old, 17.7 points, 3.2 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 1.4 steals, 35% three-point shooter, 87% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Robert Bolly, 6'1", 178 pounds, 30 years old, 18 points, 5.5 rebounds, 8.4 assists, 1.4 steals, 32% three-point shooter, 96% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Shooting guards: Chris Newsome, team captain, 6'2", 190 pounds, 35 years old, 15.7 points, 3.6 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.3 blocks, 21% three-point shooter, 86% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. CJ Perez, 6'2", 187 pounds, 32 years old, 19.1 points, 3.8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 2 steals, 33% three-point shooter, 58% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Bobby Ray Parks Jr., 6'4", 215 pounds, 33 years old, 11.9 points, 3.7 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 0.9 steals, 29% three-point shooter, 83% free throw shooter in his ongoing 2025-2026 Japan B-League season averages. Jordan Clarkson, considered as a local player, 6'3", 194 pounds, 34 years old, 9 points, 1.7 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 0.4 steals, 33% three-point shooter, 80% free throw shooter in his ongoing 2025-2026 NBA season averages. Small forwards: Justin Brownlee, naturalized player, 6'5", 220 pounds, 38 years old, 16.5 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.5 blocks, 30% three-point shooter, 86% free throw shooter in his 2027 FIBA World Cup Asian Qualifiers second window averages. Calvin Oftana, 6'5", 186 pounds, 30 years old, 18.4 points, 6 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 1 steal, 42% three-point shooter, 81% free throw shooter ni PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Arvin Tolentino, 6'5", 210 pounds, 30 years old, 11.3 points, 2.7 rebounds, 1 assist, 39% three-point shooter, 76% free throw shooter in his ongoing 2025-2026 KBL season averages. CJ Cancino, 6'3", 175 pounds, 26 years old, 18.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, 4.7 assists, 1 steal, 0.5 blocks, 34% three-point shooter, 81% free throw shooter in his PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Power forwards: Justin Baltazar, 6'9", 250 pounds, 29 years old, 14.9 points, 14.2 rebounds, 3.2 assists, 0.9 blocks, 29% three-point shooter, 71% free throw shooter in his PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Troy Rosario, 6'7", 218 pounds, 34 years old, 8.6 points, 6.6 rebounds, 1 point and assist, 0.4 steals, 0.4 blocks, 24% 3-point shooter, 87% free throw shooter in his PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Mike Phillips, 6'8", 220 pounds, 24 years old, 13.2 points, 15.7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.2 steals, 55 field goal percentage, 60% free throw shooter in his UAAP 88 season averages. Brandon Granuela's roster, 6'6", 220 pounds, 31 years old, 9.7 points, 5.8 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 0.9 steals, 1.5 blocks, 25% 3-point shooter, 72% free throw shooter in his PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Centers, Junmar Fajardo, 6'10", 268 pounds, 36 years old, 18.1 points, 17 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 0.7 steals, 1 block, 57 field goal percentage, 60% free throw shooter in his PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Mawala Tautua, 6'8", 245 pounds, 37 years old, 8.1 points, 4.9 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 0.5 steals, 0.5 blocks, 30% 3-point shooter, 65% free throw shooter in his PBA 50 at Philippine Cup averages. Ange Kwame, backup naturalized player but considered as a local in Asian Games. 6'11", 220 pounds, 28 years old, 1.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, 0.5 steals, 100% free throw shooter, 10.5 minutes per game in his 2025-2026 East Asia Super League season averages. Quentin Milora Brown, 6'10", 245 pounds, 25 years old, 8.3 points, 7.5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, 72 field goal percentage, 63% free throw shooter in his 2027 World Cup Asian Qualifiers second window averages. Ito, ang updated and loaded complete full lineup ng Gilas Pilipinas para sa 2026 Asian Games. Sa tingin mga kababos, sino ang magiging final 12-man lineup ng Gilas Pilipinas sa loaded na pool na ito? I-comment nyo na po yan sa baba.